Hugh Richard Walter McElroy was born in Liverpool in 1874, one of four siblings. When Hugh was just 14 years old, his father passed away. Hugh decided to study for the Catholic priesthood, and when he was 16 years old, studied for 2 years in Cornwall, where the St. Mary's Priory was located. However, he ultimately decided that the religious life was not for him, and he moved back to Liverpool. That same year, 1892, he was hired by the Allen shipping line and went to sea as a purser for the first time in 1893. It was said that Hugh took to the job very well. He spent the next several years working for that company. A purser is the officer who handles the money on board a ship and is responsible for all of the passengers' needs. He is also in charge of the victualling department, which is the food service for the ship. In 1898, Hugh was introduced to the managing director of the White Star Line, Bruce Ismay, and the following year, 1899, McElroy was offered and accepted a job with White Star Line. He was appointed the purser aboard the Cymric. In 1900, McElroy served aboard the Britannic, when it was working as a troop ship during the Boer War. After this stint, he was then transferred to the Majestic in 1901. At the end of 1903, he was awarded a Transport Medal for serving during wartime. Over the following 10 years, McElroy would serve aboard several other ships and travel on some of their maiden voyages, some with notable officers such as Henry Wilde, Charles Lightoller, William Murdoch, and even Captain Edward John Smith. In 1910, he married Barbara Ennis when he was assigned on board the Adriatic. But in May of 1911, McElroy was transferred along with William Murdoch and Captain Smith to White Star's newest liner, the RMS Olympic. McElroy was named chief purser for the huge ship's maiden voyage. His time on board the Olympic didn't last long, however, because he, along with the others, were transferred once again to the newest liner, the RMS Titanic, in 1912. Purser McElroy had a lot to tend to during the maiden voyage, storing valuables, making sure passengers were comfortable, and changing their cabin assignments. It is said that he was as popular with the passengers as Captain Smith, and he was one of the only officers who would regularly dine with the travelers. On the night of April 14th, McElroy dined as usual at a table for 8 and had a delightful time. It is speculated that Purser McElroy was in his cabin when the Titanic struck the iceberg later that night, but would probably have been contacted by the captain soon thereafter. His main instructions for some time after the collision was to get passengers to their cabins and have them don their life belts. Once the order came to get the lifeboats ready, McElroy urged passengers and any other crew to help passengers get dressed and get to the boats when ready. He also had to disperse valuables from the safe in his office when loads of people showed up to collect their valuables. After a short time, however, he locked the safe and told everyone to go to the boat deck. There are several eyewitness accounts that place Purser McElroy at lifeboat number 9 during the evacuation, and in the final moments as the hour approached 2 a.m., several people saw McElroy help loading passengers into the last 2 boats at the front starboard side of the ship as the waters were rising perilously close. According to Second Officer Charles Lightoller, who was at that location, McElroy and some of the other pursers and assistants stood around and at the end shook hands and bade everyone goodbye. None of the pursers entered a lifeboat, and all of them died in the sinking. Unlike the other officers on board, whose bodies were never found, the recovery ship did manage to find Purser McElroy's body on the afternoon of April 22nd, 1 week after the sinking. His body was recovery number 157. He was wearing a white officer's jacket. According to reports of those on board, his body was buried at sea later that evening. Purser McElroy was the highest-ranking officer on board the Titanic whose body was found. His wife Barbara remarried 2 years later, but before that, she had all of Hugh's personal belongings put into a coffin and buried in the McElroy family plot. Barbara and Hugh had no children, but Barbara did end up starting a family with her new husband. She died in 1953. Thanks for watching Profiles from the Titanic.